Hey guys, what's going on and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about my updated prediction for the 2020 presidential election between Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. So, before we start, let's smash 200 likes. Yes, I think that our highest of all time is like 230 something, but we're going to try to get to 200. Let's get to 200 likes. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds to like the video right now. Alright, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you should have liked it right now. And if you haven't, hopefully I'll be able to get you to like it by the end of the video. So we're going to start by filling out our safe Joe Biden state, starting with the state of Washington. Oregon is also a safe state. If you want to look at the 2016 election results, yes, we're going to go to this tab already. Hillary Clinton, I don't know why it doesn't want to let me click. Hillary Clinton won by essentially 10%, and I do think Biden will outperform her because there will be less third-party voting in a blue state by around 3 to 4%, which would make it a safe state. Although, to be fair to Donald Trump, it is a lower-end safe state. California is obviously safe. Hawaii is safe. New Mexico I do not consider to be safe. Illinois will be safe. Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, the District of Columbia, with the most blue state in the Union, 90% Democratic. Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, the state of New York, Maine's first congressional district. So nothing changes with the safe states. 183 for Joe Biden. The one that I could see being likely, or if there are two that I could see being likely, those would be the states of Oregon and possibly Rhode Island. So Trump-Pence. I do similar to Oregon. I think Montana could be likely, but I'm going to be a bit more generous to the president and say it will be safe. I mean, he won it by, I think he won it by like nearly 20 points in 2016. He actually won it by more than that, or a little more than that. He won it by 20.5%. So I do think Biden will outperform Hillary Clinton in nearly every single state. However, not enough to make it likely, even with Steve Bullock being on the ballot. So Montana safe. Utah, I think that could be likely because of Evan McMullen's endorsement of Biden and generally the Republicans in Utah not being super happy with the president. But again, I think that my gut says that Utah will be safe. The Dakotas, obviously both Republican states. Now, I could see the first district in Nebraska. It's this one be likely, but I'm going to characterize it as safe because that's what the consensus is. And again, I should actually pull up the 2020 presidential election race ratings so I can see, so I can see the race ratings or predictions, state predictions, hopefully. Yeah, here we go. So the general consensus is that Nebraska's first district will be safe. So yeah, there are a few likely. There's even a lean, which is surprising, but safe to me. Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, which I'm really on the fence about whom that is likely. Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and I would give Indiana to Trump by a safe margin, but the limited polling data that we've seen out of Indiana has not been super solid for him. If you want to look, it's been 14-13, so yeah, averages to 13.5, and you would expect the polls to have Trump ahead by more like 20 or 17 or something like that, but they don't, surprisingly. So, yeah, excuse me, I don't know why I'm coughing so much. But now we're going to fill out our likely Democratic states. New Mexico and Colorado are the easier ones to do. I mean, the polls that we've seen there have been pretty solid for Joe Biden. In fact, the polls in Colorado I know have him up by a safe margin. I think New Mexico as well. But I'm going to assume, even though the polls did actually underestimate Hillary Clinton in both these states, because in 2016 the polls were like, they had her ahead by what? They had her ahead in like Colorado by 2 and she won it by 5. In New Mexico she was ahead by 5 and she won it by 8. So yeah, it really does depend on how you want to look at it. But I think Biden is polling worse than Hillary Clinton with Latinos, which is what leads me to believe that these states will be a bit closer than most people think. So now we're going to move on to our Rust Belt states that are likely. Nothing changes here. Minnesota and Michigan will also be likely, as will the state of Virginia be. And lastly, for the Democrats, Maine at-large votes. So starting off with Minnesota, the polls in Minnesota actually have been very, very solid for Joe Biden and the Democrats. They have him up by 9%, and really, there was one Trafalgar poll that had it at like a tie. Yeah, that was from Trafalgar Group. I don't really know how to pronounce that. But look, it's more of an outlier, and the RNX group does mean that that's a Republican internal poll. And then the same poll earlier on had Biden ahead by 5. So I'm not exactly sure that I trust it. And again, all the other polls are suggesting that the state is pretty solid for Biden. So it's not safe. It's far from that, actually. And in the Senate race, most people consider Minnesota to be safe Democrat. I do think it will be closer than people think. So yeah, that's essentially my prediction for Minnesota. Michigan, as well, I do think could very well be lean, but I'm going to put it in the likely column. I actually do think Michigan will vote to the left of Minnesota because of its demographics being more favorable to Joe Biden. You have a larger block of black and Asian voters, as Minnesota is more white, although, to be fair, it is more college educated than Michigan, which is why it in the past system has voted to the left of Michigan. So we're going to compare the Michigan polls from Trump versus Clinton to Trump versus Biden. So at this point in time, on October, the 12th, Clinton was ahead by 11%, which is a big deal. Again, it did narrow up to 3.6%, so we're going to compare those polls to right. Now, 3.6% lead for Hillary Clinton, and as of right now, it should show up Michigan. Biden is currently ahead by 6.7%. 7% actually, or no. Why does it do that? Okay. Biden's ahead by 7% right now. I don't know why it says 6.7, but Biden's ahead by 7. Hillary Clinton was ahead by 3.6 on election day, so we can infer that there is essentially a 4% margin of underestimation for the Republicans. As of right now, because this is the most recent polling data that we found. And again, at one point, I think Trump was actually like pretty close there. He was only behind by 3%. So yeah, Biden had by 7. I think that should be a victory for Biden. The pollsters have mostly fixed their methods, or there was just a horrible fluke in 2016. One of the two things. So so I don't think the polls will be as awful as they were in 2016 in the state of Michigan. So Michigan will barely be likely. Minnesota is probably going to be 5.5% for Biden. Michigan 6-7% for Biden. So yeah, and then Virginia will again likely be likely. No pun intended. And the polls actually did underestimate Clinton, Trump there in 2016. So I'm not really going to take the polls into account. But here's what we do know: in 2018, the House elections there in the state of Virginia were really good for the Democrats. The net was like it was essentially a net of 3 seats for the Democrats, and they won the popular vote by 14%. They also won the Senate race there by like 16%. Tim Kaine won re-election. And by the way, it flipped from a 7-4 Republican majority to a 7-4 Democratic majority in the House. So Virginia was once a red state, once was a toss-up state, now is a likely to safe Democratic state. Now we're going to move on to our likely Republican states. We have a lot of them: Alaska, Texas, South Carolina, Missouri. Also, I don't know why I didn't characterize Indiana as safe. Indiana should be safe. I think I talked about the polls for a second there, but yeah. So South Carolina, Texas, Alaska, Missouri, Mississippi sometimes, but not really right now. So Alaska, we've seen limited polling. It's basically said it's close, but Trump's going to win. I think the polls in Alaska have been pretty wrong in the past, and they actually do underestimate the Republican support usually. So we're going to keep it as likely Republican, although it could be safe. Texas. Now, I get a lot of heat for putting Texas as a likely Republican state. You know, people are saying, oh, it should be lean, it should be tilt, it's Biden's going to win in Texas, you know. But here's my case. At one point, I do think it was fair to say that Texas was tilt Republican, tilt Democrat, because the polls were so close. The polls actually did underestimate Hillary Clinton by 3 points in 2016. But Trump is starting to, surge in Texas. And I know 538 does seem to think that Texas is like within president general election. Yeah, so Biden, or 538, seems to think that Texas is a lot closer than I think. That would be a tilt margin. And again, like if we look at different forecasts, Texas for the JHK forecast is essentially a lean margin or a tilt margin, basically the same thing. And then the race ratings for Texas are, 538 is 6.5%, 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 538 is 6.5% you know, lean, tilt, lean, toss up, lean. So it comes between lean and toss up for Texas. So again, I'm I'm more in favor of Trump winning Texas because Beto O'Rourke, he had the time and energy to visit every county in the state, and yet he still he still couldn't win the race, and he out fundraised Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz much more unpopular than Donald Trump is in the state of Texas. So Ted Cruz was a bad candidate for the Republicans. I'm gonna go with Biden being able to win the state of Texas, or of Trump with Trump being able to win the state of Texas by, 5 points basically, barely likely. And then Missouri, not going to talk about Missouri. That's just going to, be 10, 11 point win for Trump. South Carolina, though, could be lean. And the Senate race there is very interesting. In fact, the latest poll put Harrison up by 1. So I think that race will be more competitive than people think, and it will certainly be more competitive in the presidential race. There are a lot of people who think Biden has a really good chance in the state of South Carolina because of Harrison. I don't really think so. He has a 16% chance at winning, which is still pretty good for a state like South Carolina, but as of right now, I'd have to give it to Trump by 7 to 9%, somewhere in that ballpark. So now we're going to move on and do our lean states. Those are the states of Nevada, Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, so Biden's basically already won, and New Hampshire. Wait, no, whoops, I was looking at the wrong thing. New Hampshire, Maine, we're not going to touch that just yet. So, where to begin? Nevada, I do think that Trump will actually overperform the polls, even though in the past the polls generally underestimate Republicans here, so I'm kind of branching out. Nevada, the latest polls have put Biden up by 6 on average, and there was one poll from Emerson that put Trump ahead by 1. That was back in 2019. So I don't really think that this state is super in play for Trump, but he does have a chance here, and I think he thinks he does. He's held a few rallies there as of late, and to be honest, Nevada, Biden does have a bit of a Latino problem, which is why I'm inclined to believe Nevada will be a lean and not likely Democratic state. If I can find the race ratings, most rate as lean or who is it as safe? I don't know who's this. Niskanen, safe. I think that Nevada could actually end up being like the Wisconsin or Michigan of 2020, where you have everyone thinks it's going to be safer, likely blue, but it ends up tilting red. So I'm going to be more conservative and go with my gut, which is that it will be lean for Joe Biden. So yeah, Nevada being lean, that makes sense to me. Arizona, I also could actually see voting to the left of Nevada. Mark Kelly being on the ballot is great for Joe Biden. I mean, he's expected to win his Senate race by maybe even 10 points there. The Democrats did very well in the Senate race in 2018. Kirsten Sinema ended up winning that state. And the polls actually do underestimate Democrats here. So in 2016, 2016, Arizona polling from RCP, you will see that the polls actually, they put Trump ahead by 4 on election day. He ended up winning it by 3.5, so they're accurate, but they did at one point underestimate. They did underestimate Hillary Clinton. So, yeah. So the recent polling data we've seen from Arizona, though, has put Biden ahead pretty consistently. Latest poll has put Trump ahead by 4. That's from Trafalgar Group, which again has not been well respected by the election community, except for some right-wing forecasters. I mean, 538, Nate Silver, who is actually, he said he is a Republican, rates it as a C- poll. So, yeah, Arizona, Biden ahead by 2.7 is the average, and I think he'll win it by a little more than that. Again, the polls did underestimate him, or Hillary Clinton in 2016. So, yes, Arizona, I do think will end up being lean Democrat. Wisconsin, the polls were horrible there in 2016. They, underestimated Trump by, 6-7%. So we're not going to look at the polls, but we are going to look at the race ratings on Wikipedia from other sources. Wisconsin, that's interesting. Lean Democrat, till Democrat, lean, toss-up, likely, which is interesting, lean, likely, lean, likely. So not a lot of safes, which is good to see because I really don't think that you should rate a state that went to the other party the previous election cycle as literally just safe. So yeah, but the state will, in all likelihood, go to Biden by something like 4 to 5% higher in likely margin or higher in lean margin. JHK, I know, does put it as a likely blue state. Wisconsin, Biden had by 7.2, so that's pretty interesting to see. And then, The Guardian in 2016, they report that Trump ended up winning it by just literally 20,000 votes. So the polling there, by the way, again, it was horrible, so we're not going to look at the polls. But my gut feeling, Biden has better Rust Belt appeal than Hillary Clinton does. That'll propel him to victory. Pennsylvania. This state, Biden is from here. He helped with the auto bailout, which mostly affects Michigan. But Pennsylvania, I think it does have some value there. The polls in Pennsylvania did underestimate Donald Trump, as we know. So let's see what they are saying this time around. Well, they're putting Biden ahead by 7.1. And this is RCP, which did a very good job of weighting the polls in 2016. 538 didn't do so well. 538, really, in the state of Pennsylvania, in 2016, they were not that great. But they're putting Biden ahead by 7.3. And Biden is starting to surge. At one point he was only ahead by 4. Now he's up by 7.5 nearly. So I think these polls are pretty accurate. They will probably underestimate Trump by 1 to 2%, but I'm going to give the president the benefit of the doubt. I think that Pennsylvania, he will campaign there. He seems to think he can still win it, which may come as a surprise to some. But again, he needs the state. Like, if Biden doesn't win Pennsylvania, he has to make up for it in a state like Florida or Ohio. And he has a much better chance of winning Pennsylvania than either of those states. So Pennsylvania, I do think, will end up going to Biden either way. Now, New Hampshire is our last lean state. Not much to say here. It could be likely. The polls were very accurate there in 2016. They were literally right on the mark. So we're going to trust them, and they're saying that Biden is ahead by, I think, 10 points. New Hampshire, they put Biden ahead by 9 points. So the latest polls are, the latest polls have been pretty good. So I'm going to give Trump the benefit of the doubt here, as I am in a lot of these states. So I'm not being biased against Trump. It's not like I'm just only using polls. I'm using a ton of different things, as you can see by these tabs that I have open. But colleges, not all of them are in person, which could halt a Democratic voter registration efforts. So, yeah. Georgia would be the lean Republican state. I do think that Biden will end up making it somewhat close. I think people who say that Georgia is going to be blue are kind of wrong because, again, the polls have been close. That's great. But, again, Georgia, the polls have had it as a pretty close race. Trump is ahead by 0.4. That's about as close as it gets. And at one point, Biden was ahead by 0.3. And remember, back in July, Trump was still winning by a decent amount. So, the polls in Georgia were okay in 2016. But I think voter suppression will come into play. It did happen in the 2018 gubernatorial election. Brian Kemp is kind of known for it. You can do further research into that. That would take 10 minutes for me to explain. But do further research into that because it is, in all likelihood, going to happen again unless Brian Kemp has a change of heart. Now he's the governor, not the Secretary of State. Now our teal Democratic states. We're going to go North Carolina and Florida being tilt. I don't really like to characterize either of these states, but I have to, and then we're going to go the rest tilt Republican. So let's get through this really quickly. Florida. What are the polls saying? Well, the polls are very accurate in 2016. The spread is Biden ahead by 3.7. Trump really hasn't done a ton to help stop the bleeding here, and he actually made it pretty close at one point. Only a few weeks ago, he was behind by 1. He was within the margin of error. Now he's not anymore. So the polls are just as a lean Democratic state. And in Florida, let's say what RCP says, they have Biden ahead by 4.5. And again, we've seen Biden surging lately. The election forecasters, the professionals that do this for a living, what are they saying? Well, they are saying it's either a toss-up or lean/teal Democratic. I don't know who has it as likely. Oh, that's Niskanen. That's not. I don't really trust them. So, they're saying that Maine's for first district and Maine's at large are safe. Massachusetts, Michigan. There was one that they have Nevada and New Hampshire is safe. So, same with New Mexico. So I don't really trust them. But Florida tilt Democratic, I think, is the right way to go. There has been more vocal support for Trump down in Miami, but in more vocal support for Biden up in Jacksonville. in Tampa. So I think that's going to help Biden win here. But again, Trump has an easy path. He just has to get 1% more votes in Miami-Dade County, which is the biggest county, and not lose too many up in Jacksonville or Tampa, and then he should be able to win. But I don't think that he'll be able to do that. Apparently, he's losing support with Latinos and seniors, which is not good for him. North Carolina, the polls there, I think that they actually did. They were very close in 2016. They underestimated the Republicans by 0.5%. At one point, the Democrats were doing very well. They were winning. Biden was winning here by 5%, which is a good first day that Trump won in 2016. But Okay, well, that's interesting. But as of right now, Biden is at about 1.4, so it's within the margin of error. But I'm going to give Biden the benefit of the doubt here. He has stronger black support than Clinton does. The JHK forecast does seem to agree with me that North Carolina will be a tilt Biden state, by a lean margin, which is interesting. And we're going to see the race ratings. Probably they all say toss-up, which isn't helpful, but we'll see the ones that actually do their job and rate it. Toss-up or lean Democratic. So yeah, I'm going to go in the middle, tilt Democratic. So yes. And then Iowa, Ohio, Maine, 2nd Congressional District. First Maine, 2nd Congressional District. It's very rural. So I think that's going to just lead Trump to a victory. Biden will outperform Clinton here as expected, but still won't be enough to win. And in the state of Iowa, the polls, I think, actually do put Trump ahead as of late, but, the polls aren't great. Or actually, they put Biden ahead. But the polls in Iowa weren't great in 2016, so Biden's within the margin of error. I think Trump's going to win. In the state of Ohio, where the polls, again, did underestimate Trump by a decent amount, Biden is ahead here. In fact, there are some actually GOP polls that, Trafalgar Group, I know, puts Trump ahead everywhere, but Rasmussen put Biden ahead by 4, or another one, but Biden ahead by 4. So, I don't really trust the polls here. They've been kind of flip-floppy, and yeah, so I'm going to go with my gut. And I know most people rate this as a tilt lean Republican state or a toss-up. See. But weirdly enough, 538's presidential forecast actually had it as a tilt Biden state. So, yeah. So again, guys, that's my prediction. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Tell me what you agree with or disagree with, but please don't be rude. I get 10 comments, in this case, 50 comments on these presidential videos saying that I'm biased. Again, I haven't expressed a single opinion in this video, and if I have, it's mostly me saying that I'm going to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. So, again, thank you, and goodbye.